Hello, everyone. It's a minute after 1, so I waited a little bit just to make sure everyone has time. Seems like everyone floods in at just after 1 o'clock. So gave it a little time for everyone to join us. Welcome to the Kansas NG911 GIS user group. We're in the third quarter of 2024, and glad y'all could join us today. I will just get started here. Looks like we have a nice group that have joined us. Today we will follow our general outline that we follow pretty much every time. It seems to work. So if it works, doesn't if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I'll start off with a project update, and then Will Trimble will take over and give us any updates on the Next Gen 911 toolbox. And then Sherry Massey will provide an update on anything related to GEO-MSAG training and miscellaneous updates as related to Next Gen 911 and GIS. So let's get started. For my part of the update, which is more of a program overview update, I wanted to talk to you about the imagery. So we keep mentioning this, trying to give you updates on the statewide imagery. Again, our vendor is Surdex, and they're once again able to acquire statewide imagery in one season. So this past late winter, so between really February and April of 2024, they were able to fly the entire state, which is just tremendous. We're getting kind of spoiled expecting them to fly the entire state of Kansas in one flying season, which is not an easy feat. So as a reminder, that has been acquired. I listed the specs there, again, statewide, 1 foot, leaf off color, and it's 4-band imagery, so we'll also have the CIR band. We will be getting delivery of it in several formats. A new one we've added this year is we have been converting all of our previous delivered imagery and historical imagery into what's called a cloud optimized GeoTIFF. The cogs just work a lot better. We're migrating the DASC architecture to the Azure cloud environment. And we've done a lot of testing with converting original native raw GeoTIFFs into this cog. It reduces the size quite a bit, but doesn't take away any of the quality of the imagery, but it really helps improve the imagery services and several things that we've really liked the performance on. So all of our future imagery services will be built using these cog files. There's the horizontal accuracy. Just as a reminder, the local buy-up program is still available. I know several of you took advantage of it this past leaf-off flying season. I think we had a few counties that did their cities as a buy-up to 6-inch and 3-inch. So that is still available. If you're interested, reach out to Jack King, who is our Surdex contact. He'd be happy to talk to you about your specific area, your specific resolution, put together some pricing for you to consider. The snapshots I have in this slide are snapshots of this 2024 imagery, because right now the Surdex has released just a few pilot tiles for us to look at. So we're in that current phase of the activity, which means we're still looking at sometime this fall, moving into the imagery QA phase of the project. And that generally puts us, that's usually released in phases. So by the time we QA the statewide imagery, that puts us to actually delivery of the imagery files in end of the year or early 2025. So you can see we're lucky. It's a whole lot of data they collected, but it takes a whole lot of time to process it and QA it and everything. So everything's moving. We're really excited about that. A little bit more about the QA. We are once again going to need your help. We really could not do this without you. As a reminder, we'll be again using Surdex SurCheck web-based tool. It's a pretty easy interactive tool where we'll send out an announcement and ask for anyone who can volunteer and help review some imagery. We asked Surdex to divide the review areas by county. And sometimes people take a whole county or 2 or 3, which is amazing. And then sometimes we have a county that says, hey, we have 4 people that want to review the imagery, but we want to focus on our county. So we'll ask Surdex to then subdivide a county into smaller pieces. As long as you can cover, it has to be an even. We can't have like 5, it has to be a grid. but we can subdivide an area if needed. The call for volunteers announcement will be coming out soon. This year, Brent Miller and Dave Groeling in our office will be leading this effort, so look for information from them. It'll be some sort of a just simple sign up form asking who you are, and then check the county that you'd like to review. And then what we do is we compare, and we try to always make sure that the first person that gets assigned to a county is someone from that county. And then if you have more than one, we'll ask if they could review a different county, or if you want it subdivided. So we'll work with you and make sure you get the area you want. But we love people that want to review more than one county. You guys are the best inspectors. So we love to brag about this. I mean, we talk about this to our surrounding Midwest states, and we tell everyone, we're like, last time we had 52 inspectors volunteer and help us QA this imagery, and we literally looked at every bit of the state and QA'd it and put flags for feedback or whatever that Surdex then will check and decide if there needs to be any follow-up or correction to the imagery. So it is just tremendous that we actually look at the whole state. It's a lot of data. So I'm like, this is my challenge this year. Let's go for 60 inspectors. And this can be GIS-based, appraiser-based, anyone who has the patience and the attention to detail to look at imagery. If you get into the middle of a field of cows, there might not be as much to look at, so you can get through that really quickly. It's more like when you get to structures and bridges and roads, we need to make sure there's no warp or anything strange going on there. So along with the call, volunteers will, once we get that assembled, and we'll assign you credentials, then we'll follow up with instructions and all that. So a lot more coming in details with the imagery QA, but we're excited. We're almost at that part of the project to be QAing the data. So look for more news from that. Okay, in other news, we've mentioned, I think myself and Will and Sherry have all mentioned this major program update, which was that the legislature passed House Bill 2690, which essentially is transitioning the current Kansas 911 Coordinating Council, which has always been kind of referred to as like a quasi-state agency. It will be moving into an officially a fee-based state agency over the next year. So no really major impact on GIS, so to speak. If anything, they called out some specific things as this bill is being phased in and implemented. So the first thing was that as of July 1st, 2024, it spelled out a little more of the allowable uses of 911 fees for maintenance and updates to GIS data. And it also specified that we've had an occurrence of a few counties not being able to staff their PSAP and asking to have their calls actually answered by a neighboring PSAP on their behalf. So, and that's acceptable as long as they, have an understanding together. But one of the big things was we wanted to make sure that originating county, even though they might not have a PSAP answering calls anymore, they were still responsible for making sure their GIS data is being updated and maintained. So we got that actually as part of the bill too. So we're happy to have that specification, because you don't really want your neighbor to start updating your data, because who knows the data better than you? So that's really the impacts of July 1st of this year. So as of July 1st next year, like I said, the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council will officially become the State 911 Board, a state agency. They added 2 more non-voting members to the councilship. So as it says, all the employees, contracts, property, and even current council members will move to the new board. So it should be a pretty smooth transition. It's just, I'm sure you might have more to say about this, but there's no 1-800 number to call to say, how do I set up a state agency? So Sherry's been learning a lot through this process of how to do that, because this is not something that happens very often. So, but that will be official. It'll be a state agency as of July 1st next year. And then also as transitioning, they also set up included some wording about establishing minimum training requirements for GIS and IT to continue to update the GIS data. So Overall, for the GIS side of things, not a huge impact. The DAS contract with the 911 Council just roll over to the 911 board. So it really should be a seamless, no impact to all of you, except for, yay, knowing that, congratulations to Sherry Massey, who has been named the executive director for the new Kansas 911 board. So yay for Sherry. We're super excited to have Sherry in this position. As you all know, she's more than capable and deserving of this position. And so she officially has been working on the onboarding, and just this Monday, yesterday, she officially transitioned to that position with the new email address. So she is no longer under the DASK umbrella, even though we're going to keep saying that she kind of is. We just like to claim her, you know. But she's officially the executive director of the Kansas 911 board. And please update your email contact for Sherry. Super important. The biggest change is it used to be at ku.edu. And so now it's at ks.gov. And KU is kind of finicky about forwarding and keeping old email addresses. So it might not even be being forwarded as of today to Sherry. So please go in and update your information to make sure Sherry gets your message moving forward. One final thing I wanted to update you on is we've been working on, of course, we work with Rapid Deploy in their Radius, the call handling mapping software. That's the software that sits inside the PSAPs that we have supporting vector tile packages and different map services that we load into for the PSAPs to use your authoritative data sitting at the PSAP. Well, we're now also supporting Rapid Deploy's Lightning, which is a mobile application that can be used on any standard, cell phone and by first responders in the field. So it's really exciting that it's basically very similar to Radius. It's just a mobile version of it. And the great thing is we have been able to integrate all of your local authoritative data, that Kansas base map and associated map services are all available and integrated through this Lightning app as well. And I didn't realize, I guess, something that had been asked for several times was responders saying, hey, how can I see the map in the PSAP out in the field? So we're super excited they asked about that, and we're really excited that we're able to work with Rapid Deploy and get all of our authoritative data, all of your authoritative data integrated into this application. So no major change really on what DAS does on the side of things. We're still the aggregator for data for this application as well. We had to do some different architecture and configuration to support the mobile application, but that's all been taken care of thanks to Will. And Will also got to put together a light and dark mode map. We didn't have to do that before in Radius because everyone's just sitting in an office looking at the map, but we got some feedback from the first responders that are using it in this pilot phase on what they like to see with the light and dark mode maps. So we'll put together those two different base map configurations so they can use it depending on where they're at in the field. So currently, Lightning is in what we're calling the pilot project phase. We've been working with Rapid Deploy on development and feedback, and they getting feedback from the responders and working with them on training and understanding the application. And from what I understand right now, Sherry and her team are working on some memorandums of agreement that will allow the PSAPs to, be able to deploy this to the PSAPs and be able to use this application. So statewide deployment will be coming soon. And this is a PSAP by PSAP decision. It's available, and if a PSAP or wants to use it, they can certainly sign up and use it, but they don't have to. Sherry, is there anything else you wanted to add to that before I move on to Will?
Just that we've actually released the MOA on, I believe, the previous admin call. We brought it up, the PSAP admin call.
Okay.
But we haven't advertised it to the broader community yet because we're still working on sample policies for local PSAPs to use, because the way Lightning works, the council is giving it to the PSAPs, but the PSAPs have to allow responder agencies in their area to use it. And so we didn't want to send it out there without giving the PSAP some kind of idea of the types of things they need to be thinking about before they let responders have access to it. So fortunately, we got a grant through CISA to get some technical assistance from subject matter experts in writing these policies, both the council policies and the sample policies for PSAPs, just to cover things like, what do you say if somebody wants to use their personal phone and you decide you want to allow that? What are the rules about keeping it safe, the data safe, that kind of thing? What do you need to have in place just to talk about when people get access and who gets access and that kind of thing? So those sample policies for the PSAPs are the last step before we'll be sending everything out. It's just with all the other stuff going on, much of which Eileen has mentioned, we just have not had time to finish those policies, and hopefully we will over the next couple of weeks.
All right, thanks for that, Sherry. Yeah, moving from, we know the predetermined computer and operating system, everything you're using, into a mobile environment where it could be all sorts of different phones and operating systems, is a kind of a different world of support and training. So I'm excited, though. I think it will be really great when the agreements are ready and people are ready to start signing up for it. Okay, with that, I will hand it off to Will Triple now. Talk about the toolbox.
Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'll keep my section pretty short here. It's more just of update of pushing things down the line again for another quarter. We'll start the next quarter, hopefully. So yeah, we're kind of at the same point. Really, the big push for the end of the year here is to get the Pro Toolbox Python 3 support out. Again, this is less of a technical hurdle of going to Pro and more of a hurdle of making sure that we have all of our internal processes and partnership processes supported for Pro. As you guys are probably familiar, everybody likes to hold off on updating until the last possible minute, and so we're making sure that all the things we're using both internally and externally are going to be compatible with any of the changes that we make. And then along with that, I'm just trying to refresh some of the documentation presentation. So that includes inside the tools themselves and the tooltip, another interface for consuming our training via story map. Just make that information a little more accessible, both for people who use it on a more technical level and for people who just want to kind of know more about what we do potentially and how our system works, etc. So that's the main push, and I'm hoping that will be out for the very start of Q4. So that'll give us people who want to use it the full time to do a submission if they want to, and we'll make sure everything's going and working as it should before the end of quarter, the end of the year at the holidays. This is something that is on sharing on this wish list as well, and that should also be coming out for the start of the quarter, and that's something that Barry will be talking about. It's nothing too major there. I'll let Sherry talk about that a little bit more on her side. This is just a list of our current bug fixes that'll be rolling out with that. Most of it's related to the address point, UMSAG road centerline overlap check that we rolled out last year. Pretty complex process, and it was working for about 99% of the things, but there were a few locations that we found some loopholes that caused some issues with certain types of arrangements passing quality control acceptable standards. Yeah, they're very specific scenarios that didn't really cause a problem that required kind of a toolbox hotfix, but it's something we want to iron out and make sure it's functioning as completely as possible going forward. So those bug fixes with the new release. This is also something a little bit more on Terry's side, but as we're transitioning over to a new interface for maintaining our telephone records, we want to make sure that the toolbox adjusts with that as well to allow you to take your telephone record list and compare it to your GIS data and make sure that those two sync up. And so in order to do that, we just need to adjust the tool that existed for our previous infrastructure for that. And roll over to the PSP standard. So that'll be coming probably after this pro release. So maybe the start of 5. And that's it for me. If you have any questions, there's my contact information. There's the more detailed toolbox story map. And thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, Will. As you can see, there's always things to tweak and fix and do in the toolbox. So if you have any questions, I'm going to hand over to Sherry, but as we're going through this, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, I'll hand off to Sherry now.
All right, so I wanted to start with talking to you guys a little bit about the indoor mapping project. So one of the things that's happening on a national level is there is a very, very hard push to do mapping inside critical infrastructure buildings, particularly high safety concern buildings like schools and multi-story buildings where people either live or attend events. And the indoor mapping kind of has two focuses. One of them is just being able to navigate and understand what is inside the building. That's largely responder focused and is just kind of about having a map of the inside of the building. Whereas the other is about establishing where all the internal addresses or sub addresses are, like each individual apartment, including which floor they're on and the basic elevation or the base elevation for that floor. The elevation piece is critical for 911 because the FCC has issued a mandate about phone companies providing the Z value along with wireless calls. And so instead of just getting the ground level location, you will also potentially at the 911 center be getting the elevation information that could help you figure out which floor something is on. Now, there's a lot of detail in that and technical detail in that kind of doesn't matter so much from the GIS side of things. What does matter is because these two projects are similar, or these two needs are similar but not identical, there's a whole lot of people out there offering services, shopping services, talking about services, grant money available for services to do indoor mapping. And there's been a lot of confusion on which products address which of those needs and which do not, and how, if you're going to spend money on indoor mapping, you need to communicate with your vendor to make sure you're actually getting what you wanted and not just assuming that it's going to be there. So it's a very confusing landscape, even for the people that are kind of messing with it on a national standards level. And so what we decided to do is do an indoor mapping project to make an informational document for anyone who is considering indoor mapping in Kansas. So there are 3 different companies participating in this. They are using very different methodologies. And Josh Michaelis, who I noticed was on the call, or at least was a bit ago, I can't see the list right now, from Rice County, very generously is helping us with Central Elementary in the city of Lyons in Rice County, which is our subject school. And Central Elementary is being mapped by all 3 of these companies, and each of these 3 companies uses a different methodology, and they kind of each have a different target audience for the products they put out. And so they're all mapping the same building or this same couple of buildings using their chosen methodology, and they are producing their product. We at DASK, and yeah, it's still a we, I think, but we at DASK are going to be looking through the data that comes back from them, and we're going to be checking. I'm sure it's very good for their intended purpose, but will it also serve the other purpose? Does it provide that indoor map that allows you to navigate inside the building? And does it provide accurate enough elevation information to give you some kind of reference when a 911 call comes in with Z-axis? Is it coming in a format that can even be used in radius, which most of the 911 centers of the state, really everything outside of the MARC region, use? What else can be done with the data the company provides? Could you use it in other systems? Is it not that kind of data, or does it require a lot of work or perhaps an expensive option that you would need to pay for on top of their main offering before you can do what you want to do with the data? And we're not looking at any kind of endorsements or anything like that. We're just trying to establish with these methodologies what you can do with it in the system that we have now, what you can't do with it in the system we have now, and what you need to ask for, if that's possible, what you need to ask for so that you can make sure you get everything you need. And the idea here is just to help people who know this is important, who want to make sure something is done, to help them make sure they are getting the most for their money, and that they know going in what they need to, instead of finding out after the fact that maybe the data that they just paid a lot of money for might not work in the system that they were hoping it would work in. So this is kind of an interesting project that was born out of a couple of different companies approaching us with different ideas, and of the big push at the national states GIS Council that Ken and Eileen are a part of, out of Magic, out of NINA, out of 911 in general, out of the FCC, and out of just general school safety concerns that everyone has kind of brought forward. So this project is sort of grown on its own, and we're really looking forward to seeing some of the data. I'm actually in the process of downloading the first delivery of data today, and we expect to get the rest of it within probably the next month. And then we'll be taking a look at it and seeing what we can do with it, and how it fits into all of our systems. So more to come on that, but I think it'll be valuable for people to kind of see the compare and contrast between the different methodologies. As Will suggested, the data model V3 is also on my list to talk about. We established a publishing date of October 1st. The delay on it has the document itself has actually been finished for a while from a content perspective, but we had some things that we needed to address within the toolbox and within our procedures, and just trying to make sure that as we update everything for this new version, that we don't just end up making more work for ourselves because we rushed through before we address some of the other concerns. Once again, I've said this a whole lot of times, the Kansas Data Model version 3 does not have any specific maintenance requirements. There is some reorganization and reprioritization of the layers, meaning there are a couple of layers that you are not going to be required to submit anymore. And we have added a lot of content in the appendices of the document to help you figure out how to do some things locally. So talking about address assignment, if people are trying to figure out how does the Kansas standard equate to the national standard, we have a crosswalk there for that. Just some information people have asked for over time. So it shouldn't actually bring up any major changes for how you do anything. And that's part of the reason that the priority on it has been just a little bit lower. We knew we weren't going to do much to you. It's all about getting what we do on our end kind of straight. So that's the Kansas Standard V3. And the other effort that's going on right now that I'm involved in is the NENA National Standard V3. So work is ongoing with that standard. And one of the aspects of that standard is both indoor mapping data structures and 3D or elevation mapping data structures for 911. So that might be a little bit of the reason why the indoor mapping project had been on my mind recently. But our hope is that the NENA data model will be ready for public review around Thanksgiving. And again, right at this time, there are no major changes in it that would affect local maintainers in Kansas. Almost everything that is currently proposed to change in that model would be something that we would handle on the processing side rather than you guys having to change something you do locally. All right, so the training update, we are going to be doing the data maintainer training at pre-conference at CAM. And as always, if there's anything specific you would like us to cover in detail, please contact us and let us know that. We have talked for literal years about the public safety platform, about PSP. And actually, at the beginning of this month, we sent PSP the information about the GIS users that they would need to add to their system in Kansas, but we don't know how long it is going to take for them to do that. So I tried to get an update right before the meeting and wasn't able to do that. But what you can expect is that whoever is registered as the GIS maintainer for a PSAP is going to receive a notification that they have an account in PSP and some instructions about logging on and setting the password and that kind of thing. Now, some of you already do this because some of you have participated with us in the beta testing portion of PSP, but everybody will be getting that. And once they receive that notification, my understanding is they will get a notification with a list of possible training times that they can select from for the training and how to use PSP, which is about an hour-long class. And it's dry, I'm warning you now, but it's valuable and you should sit through it if you haven't yet. I would love to be able to give you a better idea of when those emails might go out, but I just do not have them. And I probably should have taken the PSP's transitional data management service bullet off. But since it is there, I will tell you why it should come off. AT&T has, for the time being, decided not to pursue providing that data management service. So for those of you that were involved with the beta testing, the limited beta testing that we did, they have put the project on hold. That's why we're not asking any more of you, and they are not asking any more of us. And at this point, we're just going to work to get everybody access. Thank you for updating that. We're going to work to get everybody access so that you can see the MSAGs generated from the GIS data and see the telephone records that are presented against them. If that is necessary for the work that you're doing for doing any maintenance, or if somebody calls and has a question, and that's the account that you'll get notification of is the account to be able to log in and view things. You'll still make the changes through GIS data. It's just an opportunity to see for yourself what they did with your data. As a part of that, though, there will be new reporting related to GIS data maintenance. So one of the items in the standard that we have not had a good, reliable way to test, one of the requirements is that you have an address point for every landline telephone record. And basically what that means is that there is an address point with an address that matches every telephone record in PSP. So one of the things that has been worked on and was successful was for PSP to produce a report for us every week as the data is submitted to them. A report that lists all of the telephone records that they could not find a matching address point for. And so they're delivering that report back to us, and we are working on a process where we will be delivering that report to you. This is a standard requirement that there be a telephone record for every address point, or I'm sorry, the other way around, an address point for every telephone record. So when you get these reports, you will need to add those address points. Right now, we don't have like a hard timeline on when it has to be done by, but we are working on kind of a tracking module to make sure that progress is made on getting it in there, because for quite a few of you, this will be the first time you have ever heard that there are records at these addresses. Some of them may even indicate addresses that have to get changed. So keep your eye out for the report. We'll be giving you instructions when you get the report, and understand that you have the time to work on it and get it right. And hopefully most of you don't have that much to work on. And so then the executive director stuff. As Eileen mentioned, I was named the executive director for the state 911 board, and that job began officially yesterday. And I will be overseeing the transition between the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council and the State 911 Board. And that's going to be a whole lot of accounting and rules and things like that, and much less GIS than I would like. However, I wanted to give you just kind of some ideas about where to go if you're used to contacting me for something and you try and I am swamped and don't get to answer you, or you just want to go to whoever is kind of handling things. So Will and Eileen are still going to be the contacts for questions about NG911 GIS compliance. Will does a great job in helping anybody that has questions about using the toolbox or meeting compliance requirements. Historically, I have handled the map discrepancy reports. Now, these are the discrepancy reports that 911 centers put in when they believe they see something wrong, either with how a phone call mapped or with the map itself. And I will not be handling that going forward unless something comes up where somebody believes that I am needed to figure out what's going on. Scott Eckberg, who is way brighter about some things than I am, will be handling this, and Will has already started educating him in how the GIS processing system works in the background. I will ask you to be patient. Scott will occasionally, I am sure, ask you data questions that that maybe should be obvious to a GIS person, because he's not a GIS person, but what he is incredibly knowledgeable about how phone calls route and how our system works and how Radius works. And I think that it is going to be really a benefit to all the 911 centers and to you guys that he's working through those reports with you. As far as training goes, I will still lead the data maintainer training this year at the pre-conference at CAM. And what happens after that is kind of up in the air. We don't have a really good idea yet of exactly what my workload is going to look like. We know in the next year to year and a half, it's going to be really, really high. But how much I'm able to be involved in data maintainer training and stuff going forward really is going to depend on what that looks like. So more to come. We'll keep you updated, and I will still be here for user group meetings as often as possible. But that's kind of the way things are breaking down right now.
Sherry, so first of all, yay, because I think Sherry wants to stay in some GIS part of the world and is trying her best to do so, even as the executive director. So we're thrilled that she'll still be participating in being the instructor for the training this year. We have a couple of questions in the chat about the PSP report, so I thought I'd ask those real quick before we go to the next slide.
Absolutely.
First one is, what if the PSP report is incorrect?
So if the PSP report is incorrect, That's kind of a loaded question. Or I guess maybe my answer is loaded. So if the report is incorrect, there's two possibilities. First, the possibility is that the telephone record has a bad address on it, and that record needs to get updated. And in that event, the person who logs into PSP will have the ability to recommend a change through what's called a telephone record change request, or TNCR. We'll have a little bit about that in the instructions. But the easiest way, honestly, is because there has been a very low volume of this since the reports started coming out. We've been looking at these reports for a while and working with AT&T to make sure they're as accurate as possible. And we've not seen a whole lot of them where it was really obvious the issue was the telephone record. But probably the easiest way to handle them when they come in is to get a hold of the phone company that owns the telephone record and talk to them about where it is. The other way the report could be incorrect is if your data says 101 Main Street and the phone record says 101 Main Street and it's still returning as not a match. We did run into that some in testing, where some of the telephone records had things like trailing spaces, or maybe had characters that just couldn't be seen. So they weren't matching the way they should be. So if anybody sees something like that in any of these reports, and again, I hope we'll have this in the instructions that go out with the reports, but if anybody sees anything like that, you can just let us know and we can work with PSP to get that issue cleaned up, get that telephone record corrected, or get their scripting process corrected if it's all the way to that kind of problem.
Great, very helpful. The second question is, in the past, there have been addresses for telephone boxes. Are addresses required for those, or should those be removed from the PSP system?
So right now, they have two different indicators for what these telephone records actually are. One of them is basically a record that should be in GIS, meaning this should be a real address. It should match to an address point. And then a record flag that says it is a non-GIS address. And that flag should be on anything that has a placeholder address, like some of those telephone boxes where people really don't know where they are or really haven't identified physically where they are. But also a few other things, test records, things like that should be flagged so they never show up in those error reports. And that has been a good bit of the cleanup we have been doing on the back end for a very, what seemed like a really long time. We would get a copy of those error reports and then identify all of the things that should be non-GIS, meaning they shouldn't be in the GIS data at all, and send them back. And then it seemed like the next week we would get a completely different set. So, but I haven't seen those. I haven't checked the reports in the last few weeks closely, but when I was checking them, I hadn't seen them for quite some time. I think we did go through and clean them up pretty well. So if new stuff gets added, again, if you see something that you're like, hey, I don't know what this is, and neither does anybody else, you can let us know and we'll make sure that it is flagged as non-GIS. The phone company can keep it if they really want to, but for our purposes, it won't be testing against the address points and returning as errors for us.
So a continuous work in progress effort to get that nailed down.
Indeed.
Okay, I'll let you keep going on the last slide.
Alrighty. So just a quick wrap up that we do have, the outreach stuff that we've talked about. We're going to keep our quarterly user group webinars, of course, and we'll have one scheduled for Q4 here soon. And the GIS maintainer class will be pre-con at CAM, and the Q4 user group will be at CAM. I don't know what day yet. I don't know if that's been decided. The GIS data steward class for PSAP personnel is on the Kansas Learning Management System, the Coordinating Council's Learning Management System. The class actually may not be live right now because it needs a couple of updates, but it will be fairly soon. I'll get in there and take a look at it here shortly. But you can always get the information that you're looking for either from the Desk Hub, which I highly encourage from the GIS data perspective, or the Coordinating Council's website. The Coordinating Council's website will be available for a while, but it will most likely be transitioning to a state of Kansas style website sometime in the next year and a half or so. So in the interim and kind of just in general, I recommend that people go to the Desk Hub if they want information about our GIS program. That's where we update it honestly the most frequently, and we have the most in-depth data, I think, on GIS.
And if there's ever anything you're looking for, we have the separate NG911 initiative there. If there's ever something you're looking for and you can't find it, let us know. I've been thinking about some ways to kind of update that information to always keep it relevant and easy to find. And of course, we'll add anything like the PSP instructions and things like that. We'll add those as well under the standards and instructions section. So. Okay, with that, I'm not seeing any other chat questions. Did anyone want to come off of mute and ask a question? We've got a couple minutes. Okay, not hearing from anyone. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you found this update helpful. And we are going to have a user group in person as we usually do at the CAM conference. Of course, the pre-conference GIS data maintainer, you don't have to register for the conference. You do have to register for the class through the CAM website, but you don't have to register and attend the conference to go to that class. And as it being one of Sherry's probably last official training sessions, I think there'll be a rush. I have to, get a like Ticketmaster, get your seat now. So be sure to register that through the CAM. I'm sure it's going to be a big rush through the CAM website. The user group is a session we'll have at the CAM conference. We find that really helpful to be in person and have a more of an interactive just chat with people about questions or curiosities or what's going on in their PSAP. So if any slides are produced for that session, we'll of course post those on the DASK website as well. All right, anything else from Sherry or Will?
Nope.
Good for me.
Okay, great. Well, final congratulations to Sherry, and thanks for joining us, everyone. And I'll post the slides and recording of this webinar here in the next couple of days. Have a great day, everybody.